Rental arrears have hit record levels. New figures from Reposit show the average rental arrears case now stands at £2,081 in the first quarter of the year. That's a 2% increase year on year. On paper, that may look modest, but look beneath the headline and a more significant shift is happening. Because this data lands just days after the Renters' Rights Act came into force on the 1st of May. And according to Reposit, landlords are already becoming more cautious. Ben Gretsch, Reposit's CEO, says landlords are becoming increasingly risk-averse, placing greater emphasis on financial security and tenant reliability. And frankly, that's not difficult to understand, because this is no longer the same private rented sector. Section 21 has gone. The no-fault route that many landlords relied on as a backstop has been abolished. And what replaces it is a possession framework that demands evidence, process, and judicial scrutiny. That matters enormously when arrears begin to build. Because if a tenant falls behind on rent now, landlords are looking at Section 8 possession proceedings. And Section 8 is not a simple replacement. For serious arrears cases, landlords would typically look at Ground 8. That's the mandatory rent arrears ground. But the threshold is significant. You're generally looking at least 3 months unpaid rent, and crucially, that arrears threshold still has to exist when the case reaches court. If the arrears reduce below the threshold, the position changes. Then there's Ground 10, some rent lawfully due and unpaid, and Ground 11, persistent delay in paying rent. But both of those are discretionary grounds. That means a judge looks at the wider circumstances and decides whether possession is reasonable. So unlike the old compliance-led Section 21 model, where the focus was often on getting the paperwork right, gas safety, prescribed information, deposit protection, serving notices correctly, the new model is far more operational. Evidence gathering, payment histories, tenancy management, records of engagement, attempts to resolve matters, and potentially lengthy court processes. Reposit says average traditional tenancy deposits currently stand at £1,308. That's nearly £1,000 less than the average arrears figure. So landlords looking at this data are not just seeing missed payments, they're seeing exposure, because arrears rarely sit in isolation. There are legal costs, potential delays, void losses, property condition risks, and enforcement uncertainty. Now Reposit says arrears growth is beginning to slow. To put that in context, arrears rose 27% between Q1 2023 and Q1 2024. Then 23% between Q1 2024 and Q1 2025. So yes, growth is slowing, but arrears remain elevated, and affordability pressure has not disappeared. Interest rates remain relatively high. Inflation continues to squeeze household budgets. And for many tenants, affordability pressures have been building for years. There is one potentially more positive indicator. UK Finance says there were 9,520 buy-to-let mortgages in arrears by the end of Q4 2025, down by 910 from the previous quarter. So some pressure may be easing on the landlord finance side. But tenant affordability remains a separate challenge. Because if landlords believe possession has become slower, riskier, and less predictable, they adjust behavior at the front door, stricter referencing, higher affordability thresholds, greater scrutiny, less tolerance for perceived risk. So while the Renters' Rights Act was designed to strengthen tenant protections, critics will ask whether one unintended consequence is making access to housing harder for those already under financial pressure.